Guys, so welcome to our weekly stock pick. And as per usual, we have our three engineers here together with us today to share with us a very special stock that was requested by one of you guys. So without further ado, let's welcome our three engineer. Hello, three engineer.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks,
Hi, hi.
FINANCIALmissy for inviting me to this session once again. So yes, today we are going to talk about this very special stock, right, that was requested last week, right? And in fact, we actually talked about this stock, previously. Yeah, but I think it's due for update, right? Because there are certain events, right, that has occurred recently for this stock, that might has changed the fundamentals or the technicals, for this particular stock, right? So this stock, right, is none other, right, than our beloved Tesla, right? So the Tesla, was all over the news, right? For quite some time now, right? In recent times, it's mainly because of its another stock, right, called Twitter, right? Because Elon Musk was thinking of buying over Twitter, right? So that also affected Tesla as well, right? So let's take a look on how this will affect Tesla and what should we actually look out for Tesla in the near future. Right, so without further ado, let me first share my screen. All right. Yep. So yes, thanks, FINANCIALmissy. Yep. Okay. So I think you need to edit it the
I'm
screen a bit
sorry.
small. All right. Thanks, FINANCIALmissy. Right. So so today we're going to talk all about Tesla, right? So in fact, right, if we actually look back, at the price for Tesla for the last, for the recent times, right, you can see that Tesla had actually corrected quite a fair bit, right? In fact, more than 30%, right, in just 1 month, right? So you might be wondering, right, is it a good time now to enter, and what should I actually watch out for this stock, right, if I'm thinking of entering? Right, so without further ado, let me go into session proper. But before I proceed, right, if you're here live with me, right, don't forget to give this video a like, right, a thumbs up, right, so that I know that you are here live with us. And as what I always do every week, right, I'll first go through the stock last week, right, the stock that we shared last week. And this is none other than Alibaba, right, ticker symbol BABA. Right, so if you haven't catch that already, right, you can watch our past video, right, our last week video, where we actually delve into Alibaba in greater detail. Right, but if you have forgotten or you haven't watched it, right, here's a quick video from my TikTok channel, right, that actually summarizes, right, some of the things to actually watch out for Alibaba last week. So let me play it. Right, so I moved the audio, right, because there's some copyright concerns. Right, so the first thing that we mentioned last week was this uptrend line, right? So we wanted to see whether this will remain strongly supported. And if not, right, we'll be looking at these horizontal support levels, right, for further downside. The downtrend line, right, you're still trading below the downtrend line at that time. And if it actually bounces up, we could be looking at all these horizontal resistance levels. Right, and the MACD, right, it was positive, but we saw that the gap was actually narrowing last week, right? So that was also a cause of concern, right? Whether that could actually mean more bearishness, in the future. Right, so that is a quick summary, right, of the 5 things that we mentioned last week, right? If you want to know the full details, you can catch our last week video, right? Or you can catch the original video, right, on my TikTok channel. Right, so the quick recap, right, a summary of the bull and bear arguments, right, for Alibaba, right? So on the bull side of things, we mentioned that it is supported by the uptrend line currently, and the MACD was still positive, right? But on the bear side of things, it is still trading below that downtrend line. The prices are still below that downtrend line, and we saw that the MACD gap was actually narrowing, right, at the end of the week. So what should we do for trading, right? We mentioned this last week, is to adopt a wait and see approach first. And if we are thinking of going long, right, we should watch to see if the uptrend line remains convincingly supported and the MACD remains positive. Yep, and if the downtrend line actually clears convincingly, we can add positions and take profit at the different horizontal resistance levels. But if not, like if the uptrend line doesn't remain convincingly supported, and the MACD doesn't remain positive, we should not enter a long position yet, right? And we should actually wait, still the support is found, right? Whether it is at the first horizontal support or the second horizontal support, we should wait till the support is proven to be convincingly supported. So that was the conclusion, right, that we gathered last week. And let's take a look at how Alibaba has panned out, for this particular week. So here's the updated price chart, right, for Alibaba. And I've drawn a few lines and indicators, right, and I'll go through them one by one. So first of all, right, the uptrend line, this is the same uptrend line that we drew last week. And you can see quite clearly, right, that in this week, it actually went below this uptrend line, right? It crossed below this line. In fact, at the very beginning, at the start of the week, yep, and it basically traded below this uptrend line for the majority of the week. Before, at the end of the week, right, we did see that, that it is testing this line once again, right? But this time, it is not testing this line as a support. It is testing this line as the resistance, right? It looks like it's going to break this line, right? And we shall see what will happen the next week, right? Next week when the market opens for the US. And horizontal support, right? These are the two horizontal support levels that we drew last week, right? The first horizontal support at $81 to $82, right? Shown down here. It used to be tested here, right? And the second horizontal support joined somewhere lower, about $73 to $74, that was tested previously here. So you can see that after it broke the uptrend line, it came down and it nearly broke, it actually tested this first horizontal support. You can see that eventually, right, actually it closed around this horizontal support for these 2 days, right, 11 and 12 of May. Yep, and before, we saw some rebound, right, on 13th of May, right, which is last Friday, right, the last trading day last week, or this week, right. So that seems to signify, right, that there is some support, right, at this first horizontal support level, right, at about $81 to $82. So that's good, right. It means that, buyers are coming in to, support this stock at this price level. So this could be an attractive price point, right. And that if this remains convincingly supported, right, there could be a chance of a bounce back up, right? So we can see that, it didn't test the second horizontal support, right? It only tested this first horizontal support last week, or rather this week, right? This current week. Downtrend line, right? So this is the same downtrend line, and the price continued to trade below this downtrend line for this particular week. MACD, right? So MACD rise, you can see that it was positive previously. The gap narrowed and turned negative, right? And it stayed negative for the rest of this week, right? But I can see there's some positive signs, right? You can see that the negative gap is actually narrowing at the end of this week, right? Helped by this green candle at the end on Friday, right? So if this continues, the gap continues to narrow and eventually cross over back to the positive region, there could be some, bounce, and it could be some bullish reversal for Alibaba. There are other things, right, I'd like to point out for Alibaba, right, with this, recent price action this week. One of the things, it is bullish divergence, right? So you can see that, the price actually formed a slightly lower low, right, over here, right? This was the previous low, and this is the recent low this week, right? And on the contrary, right, we can see that on RSI side, right, you can see it's actually forming a higher low, right? The first low here and the second low was, higher, right? So this is something called the bullish divergence, right? And usually when we see this kind of action, it could be a possible sign of reversal. Another thing I point out is this candlestick pattern, right, that was recently formed in the past 3 days for Alibaba. And this is something what we can call as a morning doji star pattern, right? Likewise, this is also indicative of a bullish reversal, right? So we have two confirmation signs here of some bullish reversal, right, that could be impending. Right. So for this week, right, based on my trade suggestion last week, right, we didn't enter a long trade, right, because when it first opened on Monday, the uptrend line wasn't supported and the MACD actually turned negative, right? So, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the road for Alibaba, right? There could still be a bounce, right? Especially after what I point out just now, right? There is actually more confirmation signs for bullish reversal, right? In the next week, right? So first of all, we saw that there was some convincing support, right, at that first horizontal support level, like about 81 to $82. The morning doji star candlestick pattern, right? We did see last at the end of the week, and we saw that bullish divergence, right, for price and RSI. Yep. So there is some signs here, right? And we shall see what happens next week. So what should we watch out for? Right, we should watch out at least for the price to clear the uptrend line at resistance. It was testing it, right? Let's see whether it can finally trade above the uptrend line once again. Right. But if you want to actually see further upside, right, all this could just be a bounce, a short-term bounce. But we want to see further upside, in the mid to long term, we do eventually have to see that price breaking that downtrend line, right? That is the ultimate, indication or the confirmation, right? That price might be seeing higher highs and it might resume a new uptrend, right? So that is something to watch out for, and you can keep this in mind, right, as you watch for Alibaba, right, if that is in your watch list. Right. And at this juncture, I'd like to take a pause and urge everyone, right, if you are liking what we are sharing so far, right, you are enjoying what we've been sharing so far, don't forget to click that like or love button, right, and let us know, right, what you think of our sharing so far. And without further ado, right, let me go into the details of today's stock pick, right, which is none other than Tesla, right? Tesla, ticker symbol TSLA, right? So let's move on to the details of Tesla, right? So this is the overall price chart, right, for the past few months or so, right? You can see that Tesla has went up quite a fair bit, hitting highs of over $1,200, right? 1200, right? 4 digits, right? But recently, right, we can see that in fact, on the 4th of April, right, there was the previous high, right, recorded about $1150, right. Ever since then, right, ever since it hit this peak, on the 4th of April, right, it started correcting back down, right, and on the based on the last closing price, right, on 13th of May, it was only trading at about 769.59 US dollars, right? So that it is quite a far cry, right? It went back to a 3 digits number, right, for a stock price, right? And that is quite a substantial decrease, right? In fact, if you work out the math, it is down about 33%, right, since the 4th of April, and that is just slightly 1 month, right, ago. Yep, and you might be wondering why, right? Why did this occur? This stock was so bullish all the way, and then why did it suddenly actually come back down, right? Why did it correct back down by such a huge percentage? So let's go through some recent news, right? I'm sure some of you might have heard of the news, right? Because it has been all over the news in recent times, right? So in recent times, right, this is one of the reasons why Tesla value actually dropped, and it is intertwined with this particular stock, right? We all know, called Twitter, right? So basically, right, Elon Musk, right, he is intending to buy Twitter, right, and with that decision, right, that actually also affected the stock price of Tesla, right? In fact, in this article, right, on April the 26th, right, he mentioned that its purchase actually led to fears of how much of its own wealth he was actually leveraging, right? So this was quite a big concern, right, and that led to a sell-off in the Tesla shares. And let's look into the details, right, of how this could actually happen, right? So over here, right, in this article, it mentioned, right, this article taken from Washington Post, right? So this article mentioned that, Elon Musk purchase of Twitter, right, actually, led to a huge correction, right? Specifically 100 billion, right, US dollar at that time. And, at that time, right, in fact, they actually struck an agreement, right? Elon Musk and Twitter actually struck an agreement, right, for, Elon Musk to actually take ownership of Twitter, right? And with that, right, Elon Musk actually pledged billions, like billions of dollars, and that is in terms of his Tesla shares as collateral, right? And because this Twitter takeover is not cheap, right, it is going to cost him about $44 billion, right? So that's one of the reasons, right, why Tesla actually dropped, right? Because he might be required to shed some of his shares to meet his loan obligations, right? Let's look at this in more detail, right? So with that, right, investors, Tesla investors might be very worried, like about how much Elon Musk is actually willing to risk, right? Because he could be sacrificing Tesla in his bid to take over Twitter. Like, so there is two factors, right, that might be affected for both Tesla and Elon Musk, right? Net worth, which is basically the amount that Elon Musk has committed to the Twitter purchase, right? How much did he actually commit? Yeah, that could influence the Tesla stock price. And additionally, if he's taking over Twitter, right, he could become distracted, right? There's some worry, there's some fear that he could become distracted from his role as Tesla chief executive, right? Because he has to run two companies now. Right. So, as what it mentioned here, right, in the article, right, they are concerned, right, whether Elon Musk will actually sell a slug of Tesla stock, right, to pay for Twitter. This becomes a significant overhang, right, for Tesla. Right. The hard part, right, as what these analysts say, is actually going to be fixing it and dealing with the ripple effects on Tesla, right, which is seen as a golden child. Right. So once again, right, there is some fear, right, on how much Tesla stock he has put on the line for his loans, right? We do not know for sure, right, but it could be a significant amount. In fact, right, what they have actually seen, right, in financial filings is that he has actually put more than half of his Tesla share down at collateral, and that is very significant, right, because he is holding to a lot of Tesla shares. In fact, right, we did see, some consequences of, what that could, really happen to Tesla stock, right? Because, if you remember, sometime last year, right, Elon Musk actually sold about 10% of his shares, right, to cover a tax bill, right? That's, a fraction of what he actually put at collateral, and even with that 10%, Tesla stock has already dropped very significantly last year, right? So if he puts more than half of his Tesla share down, right, that could have a even bigger impact, right, on the Tesla stock, right? Yep. So if Elon Musk actually was forced to sell shares of a common stock that he has to pledge to secure certain personal loan obligations, right, there is no question, right, the stock price of Tesla will actually decline, right? And that is even in the official statement, right, given by Tesla. Right. So that is a quick summary, right, of why Tesla has actually fell in recent times, right, for this particular month. And in very recent term, right, just last Friday, we actually saw that Tesla stock actually jumped, right? It jumped quite a significant percentage, I think about 5 to 6%, right? And this article actually examines this reason, right? And it actually, is also intertwined with Twitter, right? So this article taken from fools.com, right? Let's see what it actually mentioned in the article. Yep, so in the article, right, published on 13 May, right, it actually mentioned that, it went up, Tesla actually went up by 6.3%, right, in terms of percentage gain, right? And what happened, right, was basically Elon Musk actually tweeted early in the morning, right, that he has suspended work, right, on wrapping up his Twitter purchase, right? So that is seen as good news for Tesla, and then bad news for Twitter. Right, so this was the original tweet, right, from Elon Musk, right? So he has mentioned, like, in this tweet that he's temporarily putting on hold that Twitter deal, right, pending details on the calculation, right, that he has this concern on spam or fake accounts do indeed represent less than 5% of the users, right? So he was concerned that there is quite a significant percentage of spam or fake accounts, right? So that's his reason, right, that he gave in this Twitter, right? Let's look in further details, right? So first of all, right, he mentioned, he reassured investors, right, that he still remains committed to acquisition of Twitter, right? Let's look in this in more zoom in version, right, in case you can't see it, right? And the second thing, right, is that he didn't say anything, but about still being committed, right, to paying all the originally agreed upon 44 billion purchase price, right? So we won't know for sure whether he's going to take over Twitter at the same price of 44 billion, right? The takeover price might be lower. So with that, what he mentioned, right, in his tweet, right, if any more than 5% of the accounts, right, turn out to be spam, right, or spam bots, right, he could have that, a justification, right, to lower the purchase price of Twitter, right, and he can take over at maybe less than 44 billion, right, and that would definitely be something that he would love to do, right. All right, and let's see the next one, right. So now what, right, in this article, right, so Tesla investors actually interpreted this as good news, right, as shown by the price action, right. So basically, this could just be just some a way, right, that Elon Musk is trying to negotiate for a lower price, right, to acquire Twitter, right, because it is still quite a significant sum of money, right, even for a billionaire like Elon Musk, right. In fact, this the Wall Street Journal actually calculated it is going to require 25 billion from outside financing from banks, 21 billion in cash, right, for Elon Musk himself, a sale of nearly 10 million Tesla shares, right, to raise that cash, and pledging of about 62.5 billion worth of additional Tesla shares, right, to secure personal loans to Elon Musk, right. So this is very staggering, right. It is very expensive even for a billionaire, right, such as Elon Musk. Right. And there could be a lot of things that go wrong with a complex deal, right? Any hiccup, like any hiccup between now to the confirmation of the deal, right, could cause Tesla stock to lose even more value, right? So of course, Elon Musk will want to negotiate, for a lower price, right? And that will actually reduce the risk, right, to Tesla, because he might be using less or fewer Tesla shares, right? And that actually poses less risk to Tesla, on the whole, right? So in other words, right, not acquiring, putting the deal on Twitter on hold is actually a good news for Tesla stock, and that is why Tesla actually rose, on the day where he announced this, right, which is last Friday. Right, so with this as the backdrop, right, what is the future direction for Tesla, right? To answer that, let's look at some of the technicals, right? As I always believe that technicals do offer some hints of the future price action, right? Of the future or what to come, right, for Tesla, right? So let's go on, right? But before I do so, if you are enjoying what I'm sharing so far, right, once again, don't forget to click that like or love button, right, so that I know that you are enjoying my sharing so far. And let's check out the price, right, the price chart for Tesla now for more details. All right, so here's Tesla, basically Tesla stock, right, price chart, right. First of all, I'm showing the a more broad version, right, a bigger picture on a weekly time scale, right. You can see here is W, so it's a weekly time scale. So I bring attention, right, to this long-term uptrend line, right, that I drew over here, right. So you can see that it was tested previously, retested again recently, and very recently you can see that this red candle, right, that broke below that long-term uptrend line. right? So it recently broke below this uptrend line, right? And this is not quite a good indicator in terms of the bullish side of things, right? In fact, if this continues, right, if price continue to trade below this long-term uptrend line, we could see a new downtrend, right? We could see a reversal back down, right? And bearish momentum might be likely to persist, right? So we need to watch for this, right, in the coming weeks to months, right? Right, and we now change to a shorter time scale, right, on the daily time scale, right? You can see, some further details, right? And I would like to bring attention to this, the horizontal support levels, right? So first of all, is the first horizontal support, right? That is about at US dollars 700, right? 700 US dollars, right? It was tested previously here, right? And very recently here, right? Before it actually went back up on 13th of May, right? So there seems to be some support, right, at this first horizontal support, right? So this could be quite a strong support level. Yep, we need to see whether this will continuously hold in the coming days to weeks, right? And if it doesn't hold, right, we could be looking at the second horizontal support, right? That was tested as a support previously and the resistance as well last time, at about 625 US dollars, right? So that is the second level to watch out for, right? If the first horizontal support actually breaks. Yep, and it has to break convincingly. Right, further details, right, on the daily time scale, we have the downtrend line, right, drawn here. Currently, it's trading below this downtrend line, right? So there is still that bearish momentum, right? It's still following this downtrend line, at least on the short-term time basis. So basically, right, if you want to see upside or bullish reversal for this stock, it has to break up from this line, right? It has to break up and beyond this line, right? If not, price will just continue falling down, right? You'll continue making lower highs, right? And the bearish momentum might still persist, right? And this downtrend line will still be the ultimate resistance, right? At least for the short term. Right, but if we are going to see any bounce in prices, right, bounce up in prices, right, this is the first horizontal resistance to watch out for, which is about $882 to 885 US dollars, right? So it used to be a resistance here, right, and the support as well, right, last time, right? So this is the level to watch out for, right, if there's any bounce in prices with a bullish reversal. Yep, another thing to watch out is the MACD, right? So you can see on the daily MACD, right, it has continued to be very negative, or it can continue steadily negative, right, with a constant steady negative gap, right? And if this continues, right, there could be a continuation of that bearish momentum, right? So we do have to watch out for this indicator as well as time progresses. Right, so in summary, right, there are some bull and bear arguments for Tesla. But first of all, on both side of things, is that first horizontal support, right, that I drew just now, right, appears to be convincingly supported, right, for now. But on the bear side of things, right, there are some arguments for the bear side of things. First of all, is that long-term uptrend line, it has been broken, right? We are also trading below that downtrend line, and that daily MACD is still steadily negative. So what should you do for trading? Like here at this point, I'd like to emphasize that this is my own opinion, but please do your own due diligence and not follow my advice blindly. Right. So what I suggest here is to adopt a wait and see approach first. Right. If you're thinking of going long, right, for trading, right, going long means to buy at a low price and sell at a higher price. So what you can do is to watch to see if price can eventually break above that long-term uptrend line. Also, we have to see that that first horizontal support remains convincingly supported, and the MACD, right, the daily MACD has to cross over to become positive. Yep, and with that, we can take a quick profit, right, at the downtrend line or the horizontal resistance levels, right? But if we're going short, which means you sell first, right, and buy back later, right? We do have to watch to see if that first horizontal support actually breaks down convincingly, right? Because if that happens, there could be a bearish momentum, right? There could start another wave of selling, right? And the MACD, has to continue to be negative. If that happens, right, we can initiate a short position and take profit like at that second horizontal support level, like about 625 US dollars. Right. So this is something that I would like to suggest, like just for short-term trading, right? By investor, then we do have to consider the fundamentals as well, right? In addition to the technicals. Right, and with that, like at end of the session, my sharing for Tesla. Just some reminders before I hand over time to FINANCIAlmissy. Right, if you enjoy my sharing for today, right, don't forget to click that like or love button, and why not click that share button, right, as well, so that more people can actually benefit from our sharing. Yep, and if you are joining us for the very first time, do follow us on social media pages, right? Mine are shown here, and FINANCIAlmissy's are shown here. Is shown here as well. And do leave a comment right below, right? Just like what you did last week, right? And suggest to us, what stock you'd like us to share, next week, right? Yep, we will definitely, look at your comments and take that into consideration, right? And as you know by now, right, we do hold this every Sunday. So next week will be on my Facebook page. Yep, and with the current market volatility, right? I'm sure last week was quite an eventful week for all of you. Because we did see the cryptocurrency market actually drop, pretty spectacularly, right? So there is heightened volatility in the market, right? So I think I would like to share this once again, right? It might be a good guide, for all of you out there to actually, find ways, right, on how to weather the market volatility and still, and not lose money unnecessarily, right? So you can, click on this link. I'll also paste this link in the comments later on, right? Then you can download it for free, right, on my PayHip account. Last but not least, right, I would like to also promote this event, right, coming up, right, very later tonight, right, on the Cryptoverse NFT Investor Facebook group. Right, I do share this, every week as well, and this is going to happen tonight at 9:30 p.m. Right, so it is going to be related to cryptocurrency, right? In fact, the past week events, right? Whether this actually signifies the end of cryptocurrency, or is this an opportunity to actually scale into cryptocurrency now, right? So if you're interested to find out more details, right, do catch me, right? If you are free and available, right, at 9:30 p.m. On the Cryptoverse NFT Investor Facebook group. All right, and with that, yep, I will now like to hand over time back to FINANCIAlmissy, right, for her take on Tesla. Yep, over to you, FINANCIAlmissy.
Hey, thanks, Trade Engineer. It's been a very fruitful sharing. It's been very awesome to actually know your point of view on how do we actually trade on Tesla. It's so exciting. I mean, who doesn't like Tesla, right? Because Tesla is like the new hit, the new norm kind of thing where it's always on the news. So thank you for sharing over there. And thank you for our audiences who actually tune in with us on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah, so nice to see you guys here. So I'm actually going to present on the fundamental model of Tesla, whether this company is a good company for us to do an investment, and as well as is this the right time to enter this stock. Because very importantly is that although a company is good, you want to enter a particular company at the right price at such that you don't catch a falling knife and you see your investments goes down and down and down and cause a lot of heart attack if you are not very confident and convicted on what you guys are investing in. Yeah. So for you guys who are out there with us, do like and share this video so that we know that whatever we have been presenting so far has been pretty informative and helps you in your investment journey. And of course, if you guys like my new hairstyle, also can like and share also lah, huh? So jokes aside, let me just share my screen. Where do I press here? Oh, eh, oh, sorry. Just give me a while. Hey, thanks, Sharon. Okay, I think my computer has some issue. Yeah, I'll just do this. Wait. Sorry guys, my computer just decides to move by its own. Uh, okay, we are. Okay, my just share screen one. Am I sharing it already? Yes. So, uh, let me just go to, yeah. Give me a while, guys. I got some technical difficulties. Right. Okay. Let me see whether you guys can see my screen right now. Okay. Cool. Are you guys seeing my screen already?
Oh yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Cool. Can. Thank you so much. So just let me play this thing. Okay, so Tesla itself, right, on Friday itself, it closes at 769 up on 59. In comparison within the past 1 year or so, it's like it's a lot of discount, right? Because Tesla typically when you see it's like typically above 1000, above 1000.1, 1.1, 1.2, it went up to 1.2 ish going to 3, you know. So having Tesla now, right, at the price of 769, right, it's actually very attractive. I'm pretty sure that many of you guys who are actually um likes this stock, you will feel like very tempted to go into Tesla and stuff, but just hold your horses. Yeah, on Friday itself, yes, we do see a bit of a rebound for the $1.59 increment, of which equates to 5.71%. But one thing that you guys need to know about Tesla is that Tesla is known to have high volatility. Let me repeat myself. Tesla is known to have high volatility, which means to say one day you can see increase by 5%, the next day you can see it decrease by 5%. So please do not be attracted by this sudden rebound and decide to just jump into the company itself, because it's going to be very, very volatile. Let me explain to you why. Right. So first and foremost, we look at the indicator as well. The market sentiments right now for S&P as the whole big market as a whole, right? You need to know that there is so much volatility. For the past week itself, you already see that it had broke through the bottom resistant trend. Sorry, the bottom support trend. It has already broken through, you know. So how low can S&P go, right? It's a question that nobody can answer. Okay, if anybody can answer how low can S&P go, then we probably can hot out, we can all hot together already lah. We can short, we can do a lot of stunts on it. But currently, what we can say for sure is that it has broke through the bottom support line. Right, we see a momentary rebound for the past 2 days, but please hold your horses. Why? Because the momentum right now is still negative, it's still bearish. It can go even lower, we do not know. It can come back up, we do not know. Right? So please do monitor the market sentiments as a whole, because you want to ride on momentum. Um, if you guys have forgotten what I said, I need to really emphasize what goes lower can go lower, what goes higher can go higher. Always play with momentum. Do not go against the momentum, right? Okay, so yep. And what does Tesla essentially do? Yeah, is you guys should know. Tesla designs, develop, manufactures, leases, and sell electric vehicles, energy generation, and storage systems. It's pretty cool. It has gone beyond United States itself, United States, China, internationally. If you guys have actually been following the news, right? Although I don't really like to talk about news, but but it's important to know what is going on as a microeconomy standpoint. Tesla in United States is very established, has already come to Singapore already. A lot of people invested in Tesla cars and what's not. It's been pretty cool. The car itself received a lot of good feedbacks from users in Singapore. In China, what is happening? The lockdown, supply chain deficit worsen the whole situation. Beijing, are they going to intensify the lockdown? The whole situation in China is really increasing the impact on Tesla. Okay, in terms of supply chain demand. Internationally, what is happening internationally? Apart from China, if you guys have been somewhat Googling the news and stuff like that, looking into the Tesla stock itself, you'll know that Elon Musk actually hot the transaction in India. Okay, so Tesla, for now, they are not going into India's market and to venture into another new regime. So there are a lot of movement in Tesla itself, that you guys need to know the microeconomic kind of standpoint on how is this company growing. You can't follow the hype in Tesla is the new hype, or Elon Musk is the first number one billionaire. I mean the richest man on the world, so we follow. No, right? No, guys, no, guys. You need to know essentially what is the company doing. Why? Because although billionaires can be are very rich, and you can say that you can always follow the rules, but do understand one point is that billionaires themselves has high risk appetite. They can actually invest very wildly in the market. They are okay to go bankrupt because why? They have the correct mindset to actually come back up, right? But on the other hand, as consumers like us, ordinary people, we need to have this conviction and confidence in order to invest in any businesses, because we cannot afford to take so much risk like this billionaire do. All right. So please do your own microeconomic kind of analysis, and also to know essentially what is happening to a particular company before you guys do the investments. All right. Okay, in terms of financial wise, we look at three different things. Actually, I went through with some of you guys during the last Friday when we talked about the financial statement, a very broad overview. We talk about three things: income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. For Tesla wise, right, revenue and income has been very good, consistently increasing over the years. Net profit margin 13.51, slightly lower than the past, but it can be attributed to a lot of different standpoint. For example, what is happening in the economy right now, inflation and stuff like that. So I'll give it a plus and minus, some leeway lah. 13.51 after all is actually not too bad as well. In terms of balance sheet wise, the current ratio more than one, standing at 1.35, plus minus. Debt to equity ratio is actually very, very, very good. Less than 0.5, standing at 0.1%. So it's awesome. PEG ratio slightly on the higher side, which means to say that current price is slightly more on the pricier portion. Whereas when we talk about the cash flow, we want to see how is the movement of money. The cash flow operation has been increasing year on year. What does it signify is that Tesla itself is expanding, and from the operation itself, they actually earns money. All right, so you can see that the growth potential of Tesla is somewhat there, but the cash from investment and financial are both decreasing. What does cash from investment actually means is that Tesla itself, they are selling more assets or equipments that are not that have a negative outflow of money, right? Whereas for financial wise, you know that for decreasing cash from financial, it actually means that Tesla is actually selling more shares to actually, to raise money for different aspect. Like if you guys have been following the trade engineer in his previous sharing, he talked about Elon Musk selling shares, selling this, selling that. So Tesla as a company itself, they are also doing their own financial investments and operations, right? So as a whole, we look at the free cash flow as well. Year on year is still increasing free cash flow, of which they are looking at doing a lot of different sorts of business. Okay, so there's a lot of news currently right now that's talking about Twitter and stuff that the trade engineer actually covered. So this is something that as investors we really really need to know what is the impact of this particular action by Elon Musk to actually, invest into Twitter. Okay, so the trade engineer has actually mentioned already, and I would like to emphasize that Twitter as a social media company versus Tesla as a electrical car company is two different kind of business model. Okay, so if Elon Musk becomes the CEO of Twitter, and he's going to hold it in his palm like he's going to control the company and stuff like that. Number one, does he has the capability to be a social media company boss? And he does, how is he going to split his energy? Right. So this is a very interesting question that as investors ourselves, we really need to understand what is the implication of a boss in two different kind of company. There are two different extremes, right? So let me put it into perspective for you guys. Like for example, SPH in Singapore. I believe most of the people here are Singaporeans. So like for example, Singapore Press Holding. If you guys have been following the news, there's actually news of the news of delisting lah. So back then, I was actually a shareholder in Singapore Press Holding as well, maybe about 7 years ago. But I decided to sell my shares. Why? Because simply because this particular company decides to invest in nursing home, and I was like, aren't you guys a a media company? What's with healthcare? And hence I sold my shares, and soon after you see the downfall of that this particular company itself. So similarly, if Elon Musk successfully gets into Twitter and he's going to control the company as whole, two different kind of business model, you really need to actually pay attention to how the company is being run and whether the fundamentals are being affected, right? Although Tesla now is pretty much established, but it doesn't mean that nothing will change, because things will change. All right. So although current news, it says that Twitter, the acquisition of Twitter will be put on hold to probably 2036, if I'm not wrong, because of the shareholders trying to block this transaction, saying that market manipulation and what's not. But do pay attention to what is going on, okay, or what can potentially happen. All right. Valuation wise, as mentioned, Tesla might be still a bit overvalued, because intrinsic value is about 352 thereabout. But nevertheless, before we actually want to enter any company, regardless of whether overvalued, undervalued, for all these growth stocks that are mega big, right, it's very, very hard for us to really attain undervaluation. Yeah, so we want to see whether we can ride through the momentum to invest in the particular stock through technical analysis. All right, so this particular chart itself is actually a 1 week it's a weekly time frame chart, of which very simple. Okay, I use a weekly chart for this example because I want to reduce all the noises. So for you guys out there, if you guys are looking at the smaller, shorter time frame, this is not the chart for you, because when you look at the weekly time frame, you look at long term. All right, really, really long term, because one candlestick is 1 week. Okay, it's not days already. Yeah, one candlestick is 1 week, so you need to look longer. I reduce all the noises. You can see that long-term wise, Tesla is too positive. Okay, why? Because the purple is above the blue, SMA 50 over 150. All right, but you can see that the highs are getting lower. Okay, so if you guys wants to do a bit of a longer term scalping and what's not, just note that the highs are getting lower. You probably do not want to expect a higher, I mean, it crosses like a super high valuation that Tesla can reach in the next few weeks or the next few months. Yeah, but whereas how is Tesla positioned right now? If you see the current price of Tesla 769.59, it's actually at the bottom range. You see, so you see the dotted red line, right, of which how much Tesla is cost. You'll see a double bottom right now. Okay, can it rebound higher? I cannot say for sure, definitely, but the candlestick, this red candlestick that is presented here, is actually a bullish red candlestick. Why? Aha. When we talk about technical, right, it will take more than what I can summarize in 1 minute. So let me come to that another time. But nevertheless, on Friday, on last week itself, the red candlestick, right, is actually a bullish red candlestick. Highly likely it might go higher, which means to say 769.59, like a bit higher than that. Whether it will go lower, possible, nobody knows unless I'm gone. But it will probably rebound for a bit first lah, huh? So if you extend it to a shorter time frame, a daily chart for you guys, you see that very simple. The higher the highs are really decreasing. Okay, when I expand it, and the lows, right, double bottom as usual. And if you look at the daily time frame, it has already rebounded for a little bit. Okay, so Friday itself, with a shorter time frame, you know that Friday itself is actually a doji. Okay, so moving forward for Monday, whether it can go higher or lower. Reason being, it's a doji, but so far it has set a pretty nice new support line for this particular stock in a short-term time frame. Okay, so if you guys want to look into trading Tesla, just be safe over there. For now, as an investor point of view, I would not actually really want to advise to enter Tesla, or rather do any investment at this particular point of time, because you want to look at the general market consensus on how is the general market momentum before we zoom in into any particular stock. Anything goes higher can go higher, lower can go higher, and the broader market, although it's not representative of one particular stock, but of course it gives you the momentum of the market as a whole in general. All right. And one thing I want to highlight to you guys is, okay, I see Sharon question. I'll get back to you. And one thing I want to highlight to you guys is there are a lot of talks about an upcoming recession, of which we do not know whether it will really come true or not. Hopefully not. Cross our fingers. But nevertheless, as of last week, based on the claims of unemployment benefits, we see a rise. All right, whether it will rise further, it's something that we really need to focus and and be safe lah, because nevertheless, when we want to talk about recession, there's a lot of different indicators to actually see. When a recession comes, things can get even more volatile, things can get even worse. All right, so be safe over there. Let me see Sharon's question. Right, so Sharon actually mentioned what is a double bottom. Okay, double bottom is very simple. Double bottom, you see, is like typically a chart, right? A chart that say it goes up, and then you see suddenly two jarring thing at the bottom that hits about the same level. That's a double bottom. All right, and it can go the other way as well, a double top. Okay, probably we can actually join me in my upcoming webinar that is happening next week on the 20th of May, 8 p.m. I'll go more into detail about risk management, 3G analysis, to know whether it's a good company whether it's a company that is worth our investment, and we will talk about some entry exit rules on candlesticks as well. So if you guys do join me next Friday, of course I do have some bonuses for you at the end of the session itself. So hopefully I can see you guys there, and probably use more time to actually explain to you guys more on the candlesticks as well, like a very common one, double top, double bottom, doji, and stuff like that. So do sign up with me. Yeah, for next Friday. Pretty excited to see you guys there. It will be about a 90-minute session rather than a very brief summary of a 15 minutes sharing every Sunday. Yeah. So I do hope to see you guys next Friday as well. And I hope that I've answered Sharon's question as well. Right. Oh yes, one thing that is very important that I really need to emphasize is what is being shared with you guys today is actually my own personal point of view, my personal opinion, my personal perspective. Okay. In no instances should it be a financial advice. So please do your own due diligence on whether you are really comfortable and convicted in investing in a particular stock before acting on it. Yeah, do not actually hit do not actually use whatever I just shared or whatever the trade engineer just shared to reaffirm your decision in investing or trading, because why? We are always wrong. Right? So you guys be safe out there. All right. Any other people has any questions that we can actually help to answer before we end this session?
Hello. Yep. I actually replied to Sharon as well on the double bottom as well. So yeah. So I think basically it's basically price forming the same low or slightly lower low. Yeah. So it can be at the same price, right? The same low price, right? Or it can be a slightly lower price, But I think importantly, right, we should only that is only one indication, right? We should use it with a combination of other indicators, right? And that will actually give us a better confirmation, right, of what is to come, right? So that's why when I share, I usually give quite a number of indicators, right? And all these will help to further confirm like what is going to come for this particular stock. Yep. So that is something that you can consider, right? In fact, right, I'm also thinking of doing you know um some technical class, right, for for all of you. So if you are interested, right, you can let me know, and I can schedule a time, right, for all of you guys, to actually go through a quick session, right, with me on some brief technical indicators, right, to actually watch out for, right, to beef up your technical knowledge on stocks, right, or trading, for instance. Yep. So do let me know, right, if that is something that you want to actually consider, right, or to boost up your knowledge, right, and I would schedule for one, when I'm free. Yep.
Awesome, awesome. So last but not least, before we end this session proper, do remember to tune in tonight because I will actually be joining the trade engineer in the crypto sharing as well, where we are going to talk about something exciting, something related to the recent events. Da, 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 da. So do tune in tonight and we will see you guys there. Adios, guys. See you guys next week. Oh, and do comment below if there's any other stocks that you would like us to cover. Next week, we will be covering on NU. All right. So see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
See you guys. See you guys later if you can make it. Bye.